In the bustling metropolis of Burrillville, a city where everyone minded their own business and staring at your phone was a national pastime, lived Mr. Humphrey Humdrum. Mr. Humdrum was an accountant by day and a Netflix aficionado by night. He adhered strictly to a schedule that made the trains look spontaneous. His world was calculated and predictable until one extraordinarily unordinary Tuesday. On that fateful day, Mr. Humdrum received an email with the subject line, "You've won." What he had won was not a trip to the Bahamas or a lifetime supply of caffeine, but a challenge, a world kindness challenge. The email claimed that an anonymous philanthropist would donate $1 million to charity if Mr. Humdrum completed 10 acts of kindness in 1 week. The culprit behind this email was none other than his eccentric neighbor, Mrs. Gertrude Goodwill, known for her quirks and love for humanity. She had opted for a more hands-on approach to spreading kindness in Burrillville. Mr. Humdrum was just the guinea pig she needed. Act 1. Donating unused items. Humphrey dutifully cleared out items that had gathered enough dust to be nominated for an archaeological exhibit and headed to the local charity shop. Of course, he tripped over his own 2 feet at the entrance, spilling a box of ancient lava lamps and VHS tapes, yet, instead of the usual frowns, he was met with smiles and thanks. Intriguing. Act 2. Complimenting strangers. Now, this was an alien concept to Mr. Humdrum. As he walked down Burrillville's main street, he shyly complimented a woman's gutty hat that looked like an explosion of peacock feathers. To his surprise, she beamed, turned to her friends, and said, "See, I told you it was fabulous." Mr. Humdrum had an epiphany right then and there. Kindness could be awkward but also rewarding. Act 3. Helping a neighbor. Naturally, Mrs. Goodwill was the chosen recipient. Her garden was more jungle than Jubilee, so Humphrey offered to help. One vicious battle with thorny rose bushes and a bee sting later, they stood back to admire their victorious horticulture. Mrs. Goodwill laughed, Humphrey laughed, and they both had tea, an unusual but pleasant addition to his schedule. Acts 4 to 9. The remaining acts ranged from picking up litter to paying for someone's coffee. With each act, he noticed Burrillville slowly transform. People smiled at each other more, heads turned from screens to faces, and conversations sprouted like wildflowers. On the final day, Mr. Humdrum still needed one more act of kindness for the $1 million donation. He decided to organize a community potluck. Although initially terrified by the idea of socializing, he soldiered on. The event was a resounding success.